the Battle of Waterloo, a name that echoes through history as one of the greatest military showdowns of all time. June 18, 1815, a day when empires clashed and the future of Europe trembled. We remember the strategy, the valor, the famous leaders Napoleon Bonaparte, the Duke of Wellington, and Field Marshal Blücher. We remember the thundering cavalry charges, the pounding of artillery, and the disciplined lines of red-coated British infantry standing firm. But we rarely ask a simple question. What happened when the battle ended? What happened when the guns fell silent? When victory was claimed and the armies moved on? This is the story that's not carved into monuments. It's not told in triumphal songs or classroom lectures. This is the quiet horror, the human cost, a hidden chapter buried beneath layers of glory. Today, we go beyond the battlefield to explore the unknown aftermath of the Battle of Waterloo, the silent morning. At dawn on June 19th, the fields near Waterloo bore no resemblance to the pastures they had been just a day before. Gone were the golden wheat stalks and gentle hills. In their place was a vision of hell-blackened earth churned by cannon wheels, human bodies broken and twisted in grotesque stillness. Around 50,000 casualties, dead, wounded, or missing, covered the landscape. Some lay in piles where infantry squares had been overrun. Others were alone, slumped beside fallen horses or shattered cannons. Wellington, the victor, would later say, "The next worst thing to a battle lost is a battle won." And for good reason. Even hardened soldiers wept at the sight. Limbs blown off, faces disfigured, some soldiers were still alive barely. Many had lain exposed all night, moaning in the dark, delirious from pain, calling out for water or their mothers. Eyewitnesses wrote of wounded men reaching out for help only to die mid-sentence. Crows circled. Dogs wandered the field, some feeding on corpses. The smell, an unbearable stench of blood, gunpowder, and excrement hovered in the humid air. Silence ruled, but not the peaceful kind. This was the silence of death. Field hospitals, surgery without mercy. The battle might have ended, but the suffering had only begun. Field hospitals were overwhelmed, barns, stables, even chapels were converted into makeshift surgical theaters. Surgeons, many of them barely trained, worked day and night under appalling conditions. There were no antiseptics, no sterilized tools. Just saws, knives, and the will to cut fast. Amputations were the most common procedure. Shrapnel and musket balls shattered bones beyond repair, and infections set in within hours. One British assistant surgeon, James Guthrie, recalled, "The wounded arrived faster than we could treat them. I performed operations by candlelight, standing ankle-deep in blood. There was no anesthesia. Men were held down by fellow soldiers or bit down on leather straps. Some passed out from the pain, others screamed until they lost their voices. Buckets overflowed with severed limbs. Flies clung to open wounds. Maggots, ironically, saved lives by eating infected flesh. Surgeons collapsed from exhaustion, but the screams kept coming. It was a butchery of necessity. The civilians of Belgium, a land ravaged. And then there were the civilians, the innocent Belgians caught in the storm. The towns and villages around Waterloo were forever changed. Farms had been flattened. Orchards were churned to mud. Houses were ransacked for supplies. Horses stolen. Wells polluted by corpses. Thousands of soldiers, friend and foe alike, took shelter in local homes, barns, and churches. Peasants woke to find wounded men crawling to their doorsteps. Some begged for food or water. Others, barely alive, whispered prayers and died on the threshold. One Belgian priest wrote in his journal, "We became nurses, undertakers, and grave diggers. Our sons were gone, our land poisoned, our hearts heavy. Church pews were removed to make way for stretchers. Holy water was used to clean wounds. And then came the disease. With so many dead and rotting bodies, typhus and dysentery swept through villages. Children and elderly were the first to go. Waterloo had become more than a battlefield, it was now a place of pestilence and mourning. Letters never sent, the cost at home. News of the battle traveled slowly. In Britain, France, Prussia, families waited for letters that never arrived. Mail was delayed, destroyed, or never written. Instead, homes received government notices. Short, cold, and devastating. "We regret to inform you." Many soldiers, knowing they might not return, wrote farewell letters in advance. Some were found in their pockets after the battle, stained with blood. One widow, Eleanor Gray of Yorkshire, received her husband's boots in a parcel, the only thing that survived. Another woman, desperate to know her son's fate, crossed the Channel and searched hospitals in Brussels herself, only to find a grave marked "Unknown British Soldier." Behind every casualty number was a ripple effect of heartbreak. A mother without a son. A child without a father. A village forever changed. Burying the dead, shovels and lime. With thousands of corpses scattered across the fields, the question became, how do you bury 50,000 men? Quickly, without dignity. Mass graves were dug, often only 2 or 3 feet deep. Corpses were thrown in, French with British, officers with privates, friends with enemies. Lime was spread over the bodies to speed decomposition and reduce the stench. Locals were paid small coins to help dig. Others were forced to. There was no ceremony, no headstone, just dirt hastily thrown over flesh. Some soldiers were stripped of valuables before burial. Looters combed the battlefield, taking rings, coins, even teeth from the dead. Years later, bones still surfaced after storms or floods. Farmers collected skulls, cannonballs, and bayonets from their fields like cursed harvests. In one chilling report, a British officer wrote, "The land was so full of death it had forgotten how to grow life." The price of victory. The Battle of Waterloo is remembered as a decisive victory, a turning point that ended Napoleon's reign and reshaped Europe. But behind every victory lies a shadow. For every line in a history book about strategy and honor, there are untold stories of suffering and sorrow. The aftermath of Waterloo reminds us that war is not just about generals and glory. It is about human beings' flesh, blood, and spirit caught in the machinery of ambition. The fields of Belgium drank deeply from the cup of human pain. And while monuments may rise and flags may wave, the voices of the forgotten still whisper beneath the soil. They ask us not just to remember who won, but to remember who was lost.